In this lesson, we are going to learn about CloudFormation. CloudFormation is a very complex subject. In fact, we can create a whole week worth of boot camps around CloudFormation. But what we are going to learn here is just enough CloudFormation so that we can execute the labs. So what is AWS CloudFormation? AWS CloudFormation allows you to write infrastructure as code. What you do is you write a very simple JSON or YAML document that describes the resources that you want to orchestrate on AWS. So once you create this document, you hand over to AWS CloudFormation engine, which will interpret this document and then orchestrate the resources for you. If there's any errors during that orchestration, the CloudFormation engine can roll them back. And when the CloudFormation engine provisions these resources, it provisions them in some construct called stacks. For example, if you have a very complex architecture, you can have one network stack, one Active Directory stack that depends on some set of layers. There are different ways to work with AWS CloudFormation. You can use a simple JSON editor. Alternatively, you can use our Visual Studio plugins so that when you use Visual Studio, it gives you IntelliSense support when you type CloudFormation templates. You can also use CloudFormation Designer available in AWS Management Console that gives you some visual feeling when you try to create them. For example, you can drag and drop certain AWS resources to create the CloudFormation template you want. You can also start building your CloudFormation template from AWS QuickStart. So QuickStart is a place where we have provisioned a lot of CloudFormation templates for you to study and then provision in your environments. You can find very complex architectures like SAP HANA environments created with CloudFormation, Active Directory environment created with CloudFormation. So have a look at that. Then you have AWS CloudFormer, which is a very simple website that you start in your AWS environment. And this CloudFormer can explore the resources that you have already provisioned in AWS. Maybe you have done it manually, and then can generate a CloudFormation template that maps those resources. Let's now study the anatomy of a CloudFormation template. Of course, you can give a description. So this is helpful when you maintain your CloudFormation templates in a repository. Things like, this is my Active Directory stack. This is my network CloudFormation template. You can also define some metadata that allows you to keep certain information about the CloudFormation template, which you can refer later. Then comes the most important part of the CloudFormation template, which is the resource section. So the resource section describes the resources that you want to orchestrate on AWS. These are usually AWS services. So if you go into detail of that, for example, you can say, what is the resource type? So in this case, I'm going to orchestrate a resource called my instance, and its type is AWS EC2 instance. For each type of AWS resource, of course, you have different set of properties that you want to specify. So in the case of EC2 instance, you need to specify what's the image ID, what's the availability zone that you want to run this instance. So you can pass them as properties of that resource. Also, you have some simple functions available for you to operate. For example, if you want to join few strings together, you can use this fn join function. If you want to convert a string into base 64 encoded format, you can use fn base 64. You can also refer to other resources. So for example, here I have referred to a resource called my queue, which this EC2 instance depends on. You have some other parameters that you can specify. For example, you can use the depends on attribute to specify that EC2 instance should wait until the RDS database instance is created. So you can create some dependencies with the help of depends on parameter. You have some special resources like wait condition, which you can wait for a wait handler. So in this case, I'm waiting here for a wait handler called my wait handler, and also this depends on EC2 instance. So if this wait handler does not return with this given timeout, this wait condition will fail. You can also use creation policies. So the creation policies are usually useful to wait until a certain number of resources comes alive. For example, here I have a creation policy where I'm waiting for a resource signals. If I don't get 3 resource signals within that timeout period of 15 minutes, this creation is going to fail. So this is useful. For example, let's say you are going to have some kind of auto scaling group, and you want to have 3 instances in that auto scaling group before you continue to the next step. You also have parameters, so you don't need to hard code certain values into this CloudFormation template. What a lot of our customers do is you create a standardized CloudFormation template and then parameterize certain things so you can reuse that again and again. So here's an example for using parameters. So instead of saying what's the instance type I want to have, I have created a parameter called instance type parameter and then specify certain allowed values. So whoever going to execute this CloudFormation template can select the parameter, and then based on that, the EC2 instance will change its instance type. I don't hard code this instance type parameter, but I use the special attribute called ref to refer to the instance parameter to get the type of the instance that I want to start. You also have mappings, so it's kind of a dictionary. This is very useful, especially if you want to have multiple Amazon machine image. Depending on the region that you are going to execute this CloudFormation template, you can use a map that says, if you are going to execute this CloudFormation template in, let's say, Sydney region, this is the image you should use. If you are going to execute this one in, let's say, Singapore region, use a different kinds of image. So there are a lot of use cases for using mapping. It's a place to keep a dictionary of key value pairs. You also have conditions. Conditions are useful when you want to execute a certain section or portion of CloudFormation template based on the parameters that you supply. For example, here I have this create prod resource condition, and this section gets executed only when the environment type or env type parameter equals to the prod. So in this way, you can provision or execute certain portion of the CloudFormation depending on the parameters that you pass. The CloudFormation itself can get lengthy when you start writing them, but you have IntelliSense support if you use Visual Studio. Another approach is to break a long CloudFormation template into small chunks which are manageable. And that's where the stacks comes into picture. One CloudFormation template, once it executes, can output some parameters which the other CloudFormation can depend on. You can organize your CloudFormation templates into some stacks. For example, you can have enterprise-wide standard network template. An Active Directory CloudFormation template may depend on that network stack output parameters to create the Active Directory infrastructure. And when you want to create a SQL Server stack that depends on the Active Directory, it can wait until the Active Directory stack completes its provisioning and then use those output parameters to provision itself. A good place to look at the different architecture or complexity that CloudFormation can handle, please have a look at AWS QuickStart, which gives you an idea what kind of infrastructure you can provision with that. You can provision very complex infrastructure like SAP HANA, Active Directory environment, Citrix environment with the help of CloudFormation. CloudFormation itself is extensible. You can define your own custom resources. So you can define resources for your on-premise environments to your another cloud service provider. You can also interact with external services. You can pass parameters to external services, and you can get parameters from external services. A good example is you want to pass certain parameters to your on-premise environment service to deploy certain resources. And once those resources are successfully orchestrated on your on-premise environment, that can return certain parameters to CloudFormation template to continue its operation. You can also run PowerShell or command line commands as part of AWS CloudFormation execution.